Welcome back to the Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies I have just seen while I am driving home from the theater. And, okay, this one is going to be a challenge. I have found in the years that I have been doing this that some movies you can just talk about for ages. And this doesn't necessarily mean just the good ones. Bad movies, ones that are particularly heinous, you can still talk about for a real long time, because there's a lot to dissect there. And then you get movies that, try as you might, rack your brains as much as you can, you just can't come up with a lot to say about them. And I fear that this is such a film that I actually have taken a couple days. And I've been trying to think of an angle to come at this review from. And there just isn't a lot to talk about. So this may be a fairly short episode. Of course, I have an odd talent for being able to still talk for half an hour even when I don't have anything to say. I'm kind of like Peter Jackson. I can make a 3-hour review out of anything. But yeah, so I finally checked this one out, Last Breath, based on a true story. And okay, before I go any further, let me put a little disclaimer up here. Because I always feel a little bad when we have ones that are, quote unquote, based on a true story, or inspired by a true story, or this is a true story, or however they want to word it prior to the film starting. Because I always feel bad, criticizing things like that, because it's their actual life. And, saying things like, oh, this wasn't interesting enough, or this wasn't dramatic enough. I'm sure the poor sap who was trapped on the bottom of the ocean and, basically died might have some issue with someone saying, oh, this story about your harrowing near-death experience just wasn't that captivating. So I want to stress that the criticisms that I am about to share are reserved for the dramatic retelling of this man's story, and not a reflection of the story itself. So because the story itself is actually quite fascinating. And at certain points, this film actually does a really great job of capturing that. There are certain elements of this movie that I was completely enthralled by and was just really hanging on. Unfortunately, it was none of the more dramatic elements that I think they were hanging the rest of the picture on. Alright, so let's back up. And what is this story about? So this is a story about the brave men and women who undertake one of the dangerous and most challenging jobs on the planet. They have to go underwater to repair miles of pipeline that provide natural gas and heat for, the rest of us. The rest of us parasites who just kind of go, I just want to leave all the lights in my house on. I don't care where the power comes from. And these are the people who actually have to make sure that shit happens. So we have our main character, who is played by Finn Cole. I do not remember the gentleman's name. And again, I want to stress this is not trying to be a slam on him, just a way the film portrays him or chooses to portray him in these opening moments. So when we first meet our lucky protagonist, he is, of course, living in the absolutely breathtaking areas of Scotland. He and his fiance have, I guess, bought a plot of land, and they're planning on building their dream house. And when he gets back, they're going to do this and that and the other thing. And he arrives on the boat, and everybody knows him, everybody likes him, he's everybody's buddy. So I'm just going to call this character Dead Meat, because you know the type. This is the character who literally has everything to live for, and you see a guy like this in a movie, and you're just like, oh no, oh dear, oh.
Oh, good news. We just closed escrow on our little dream house.
Wonderful. When do we move in?
Tuesday.
It's great. Things just couldn't be better for us. I'm so blessed. Honey, you know that global warming problem? I've discovered how we can reverse it. In my investigation into the assassination of JFK?
You found the evidence you were looking for.
Yes, I have proof. It's right here in my pocket. It's big, honey, really big. It goes all the way to the White House.
Do you want me to hold it for you?
Oh, it'll be safe right here. I'm in a jet. What could go wrong?
We just couldn't be any more perfectly happy.
Ooh, and yeah, we know where this shit is going. So Dead Meat is one of these engineers, and they're going out for a job, and he shares a decompression chamber with crusty guy who is a few days away from retirement, played by Woody Harrelson, and the character that they affectionately call the Vulcan because he shows no emotion and is kind of a dick sometimes, played by Simu Liu. And yeah, I am straining here, folks. I really am straining here, because this, for a guy, this is one of those things where it's like, you gotta wonder, like, what will make him happy? What will make this critic happy? I'm one of these guys who's often whose most recent complaints about movies are, this one is too long, they need to trim it down. This one goes on for too long. You must think that I have the attention span of a gnat, because I'm always complaining that these movies are just taking up too much time with superfluous stuff. Cut to the chase, cut to the meat, and let's go from there. Well, congratulations, folks. I'm about to make you pull your hair out, because I'm going to say this one is so by the numbers that I am left with basically nothing to talk about in terms of how this movie is presented, its themes, its major ideas. It's just very, very basic. I guess some things that I can talk about. These were some things I noticed. First of all, the beginning and the end, the bookends of this movie, everything from up till he goes in the water to when he comes out again. Oh my God, it's beautifully shot. Like, everything looks beautiful. Like the coast of Scotland, the colors and everything just pop. Even when we go into something more industrial, like the docks and the interior of the boat, it's all just presented very vibrant and very alive. And like I say, colors are popping and people are creating a sense of community. And I understand why they're doing this. This is clearly to create a very stark contrast between the world above the ocean floor and the world below it. This dark, stark, very isolated environment versus the much more inviting one that he has just leaving, that he's willingly leaving this the more not appropriate, but the more inviting environment in order to go down into this very scary one is kind of what makes him a remarkable person. And all of these people who do these jobs, remarkable people. So I really enjoyed that. Like, it's a beautiful movie to look at. I'm also going to say that what's weird about this picture is that, again, everything from when he goes into the water to when he comes out again, I was completely captivated by. And I don't know what it was. I guess I've always had a fascination with, I guess the best way to put it is career cultures, meaning that I feel every career, every job, every workplace has its own culture. In that, you know, the people who work there, what goes into working there, the things that they do as part of their normal job that we, the outsider, don't ever think about. And that for them, it is just a natural course of life. So this whole idea of watching these guys, you know, get on the boat, and I guess you have to spend like 4 days or something in one of these decompression chambers, getting used to the pressure that you're going to be under once you get down there, and then 4 days in there again on your way back to repressurize yourself to the surface. You know, and you got to spend like 4 days in a cramped space with 2 other people. Yeah, it's a fascinating career, and it's a fascinating world. And I like the way the filmmaker and all of the actors kind of just go about it like you really do feel like you're watching a slice of life. One of the more interesting aspects of this movie is that, as opposed to being based off a book or something like that, this one is based off a documentary. And that commitment to documentary filmmaking, making everything feel very real, and these characters and their relationships and their personalities feel less presentational and more like we are literally just peering into an important day in these people's existence, is incredibly well done. And again, for like the first chunk of this movie, I was just like, oh man, this is so cool, this is so interesting. And I felt that way at the end too. It's just the middle part that has some issues. Here's the problem with documentary filmmaking. I applaud the concept of, we're going to try to make this real. We want to try to tell this story as accurately as possible. We want to try to be as true to life and respectful of the real people who it happened to as we possibly can. I get that. I think it is a very noble pursuit, and I respect the artisans that attempt to do that, because that is not easy. But here is the problem with a more documentary style of telling of story, is that a movie, by, you know, in terms of a narrative, is structured very differently than a real life event. Life doesn't happen in 3 acts. Real events don't have a beginning, middle, and end in the traditional sense. This is why movies like this usually say they're based on a true story, inspired by a true story. The ones that get into trouble are saying that this is a true story. Because with any real life event that you then have to expand or cut down or whatever to fit into a 2-hour, 3-act structure, there's going to be liberties taken. And I just recently was watching a thing on The Iron Claw, the wrestling movie with Zac Efron that came out a couple years ago, which is a fantastic movie. But you had people going, well, that didn't happen. Well, that's not the way that, there was this and this and this. It's like, yeah, yes, there was. This is not a documentary. This is a fictional retelling of this true story. And I understand if that's your story or your family's story, you want it told accurately. But the other way to look at it is, they have to make this fit into a narrative. And the reason I'm harping on this is because this movie hangs its hat on the major inciting incident. So dead meat goes down into the water. There's a bad storm up on the surface. The boat loses power for reasons that aren't really explained, I don't think. And long story short, bad things happen and dead meat is lost on the bottom of the ocean. Okay? And now they have to go back and get him. So that sounds like something really interesting to, again, hang the plot of a movie on. You've got suspense, you've got life and death, you've got the unending potential of the human spirit, the creativity of the people involved in going around the rules or finding creative solutions to how they're going to do this. Apollo 13 is a great example of a film like that, where it's, all right, here's a problem. How do we solve it? I like movies that are survival tales that highlight the importance of intelligence. So much of our culture celebrates idiocy and celebrates Dummkopfs. And these kind of movies are ones that say, no, intelligence is a good thing, intelligence is important, and it can be dramatic to watch really smart people find their way out of seemingly hopeless situations. But that's not really what happens here. He goes down. He's down there for a long time. They go, okay, here's what we're going to do to rescue him. All right, they go down, they rescue him. That's it. And again, I am not trying to minimize the amazing things that his crew and his co-workers and all these people did to rescue him, nor am I trying to minimize the miracle that he survived. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. It's spoiler alert!
No, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Maybe say spoiler before you give away the end of a movie, okay?
But again, I feel like we could have maybe made this a little bit more dramatic. Or, failing that, I think maybe if you don't want to embellish the story of what happened, and I can respect that, then I think maybe we could have spent a little bit more time with some of these other characters and gotten to know them a little bit. Who are these people that he works with? And how do their experiences and personalities come into play when they have to make these life or death decisions of what to do? The only characters we really spend any time with are his two dive buddies, of course, Woody Harrelson and Simu Liu, who I have to applaud for this film, because this is a character very different from what I have come to know as his basic on-screen persona. You know, he's usually playing a pretty good-natured, laughable, guy you kind of want to hang out with type character. And here he plays a character whose nickname is the Vulcan because he's all business. So it was a departure for him, and he did a good job. But I don't feel like we really got to know him very well. Why is he like that? Or we had some other characters up on the bridge, such as the captain and the first officer, who play a huge role in the rescue. But ask me anything about their characters, who they are. I don't know. So I have no emotional attachment to them. I have no emotional attachment to the choices they have to make other than they're doing it to save this guy, which is important. But okay, let me give you this example. So everybody freaked out, myself included, when at the end of Man of Steel, Superman killed General Zod. That was a big moment and still a big talking point in nerd culture to this day. The problem with that moment, aside from the obvious, is that at no time in that movie did we really establish that this Superman doesn't kill. That's not something he does. So when he finally does kill at the end, and therefore violates whatever moral code he supposedly has, it's supposed to be this big moment, but it doesn't register because we didn't see that was a moral challenge or a choice that he had made prior to that event. Now, I know some fanboys would probably go, but it's well known that Superman doesn't kill. Yes, but this is also a movie that spent its entire publicity and runtime telling us this is not the Superman that you know. Forget everything about other incarnations of Superman. This is a different Superman. So you can't say that and then expect us to still bring our preconceived notions of a character into one of the big defining moments of your film. It doesn't work. This is how kind of boring this movie is, or forgettable this movie is. I've spent 4 minutes talking about Man of Steel. But the point I'm getting at is we see these other characters and they have to make these very challenging decisions as to what to do. But it's all just played very factual. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay, great. But who are these people? I just feel like if you didn't want to fudge or you didn't want to drag out the actual facts of the rescue and the situation, then there are other places you could have gotten us involved and gotten us emotionally invested. And the movie just doesn't do that. That's the problem with playing it strictly by the numbers, is you're left with something that is very, very difficult to connect with. And I honestly felt that everything from when they went into the water to when he came out was just, I tuned out. I was completely tuned out. It just didn't grip me. I didn't find it fascinating. And what's also irritating is that I feel like this movie buries the lead. The big thing about this movie, the big miracle about this film, is that this guy was deprived of oxygen for almost half an hour. And when they finally recovered him, first of all, it's a miracle that they even revived him. That's a miracle in and of itself. The other miracle being that he suffered no long-term effects. There were no long-term mental or physical side effects of having been without oxygen for almost half an hour. That's insane. And nobody has an explanation as to how this happened. The best that they can kind of guess is that an odd mixture of the temperature of the water he was in and his own personal physiology just happened to strike that balance where, that 1 in a million shot. But that's the real story of this film, and they don't even touch on it. You know this because of the end title cards. And I feel like that's something that you could have explored and used, some trick of the cinema to maybe explore the different, how did he survive? How did this happen? Or at least have a conversation about it. But they don't. They just kind of like, oh, he's up. Yay! According to the title card, the son of a bitch was back out there 3 fucking weeks later. Like, how do you do that? I feel like there would have been more interesting stories to tell in the aftermath of something like this rather than the event itself. Just from what I've seen of it. Or just the way they were telling the story. Now, I have to stress that this is not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's very well made. As I've said, there's some clear directorial choices being made regarding how it's shot and how it's presented. Again, gorgeous to look at for 80% of the movie. Captivating in the mechanics of it all. But at the end of the day, the movie just didn't leave much of an impression. Like I say, I have been scrounging for things to talk about. It's not bad. If you're looking for something to check out, you can do a lot worse. But you're probably not going to remember it. I think of another water survival film from a few years ago, Deepwater Horizon, which had Kurt Russell and Mark Wahlberg in it. That one, even though, I don't remember a whole lot of that one. That one I at least remember being kind of captivating and interesting in the end. But this one, I applaud what they were trying to do, and I definitely applaud this guy for surviving and having the balls to go back and keep doing it. I give him all the credit in the world, and the people who rescued him. Great job, guys and gals. Just well done, everybody. But yeah, as a movie, it's lacking. It's very much lacking. So I don't know what else to say. So let's just wrap it up. So final grade for Last Breath. I'm gonna say a C. Solid C. Again, not bad. Good performances, good directing, but ultimately, it's just kind of there. So, yeah. All right. So, yeah, a little underwhelming this week, but that's the way it is. All righty. But thank you for coming along. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back next time. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.